What if the greatest missed opportunity in business today is not investing in equity? Good morning and welcome to Disrupting Poverty Through Leadership That Deliver Results AM Talk Show. I'm your host, Dr. Tekemia Dorsey, and today we are challenging a narrative that has limited progress too far, too long. Because equity is often viewed as charity, as an obligation, as something extra. But today, we're going to reframe that completely. Equity is not at a cost. It is a return on investment. Today's episode, entitled The Return of Investment of Equity. Let's start with a reality check. Organizations invest in what they believe produces results. So, if equity is underfunded, underdeveloped, or deprioritized, it's not because it lacks value. It's because leaders have not fully connected to its measurable return. That was a mouthful. Let's try it again. So, if equity is underfunded, underdeveloped, or deprioritized, it's not because it lacks value. It's because leaders have not fully connected to its measurable return. And that's the shift we're making today. We're moving equity from a moral conversation to a strategic leadership decision. Let's begin by defining what we mean when we say equity in a professional and economic context. Equity is often misunderstood. It's not about equal distribution. It is about strategic investment based on need and opportunity. Equity ensures that barriers are removed so that performance can increase. When leaders fail to address inequities, talent is underutilized, communities remain economically stagnant, organizations lose innovation and growth potential. The truth is that inequity is expensive. Iniquity is expensive. So if iniquity carries a cost, what does equity actually return? Let's talk about ROI. And ROI means return on investment. When inequity is done right, it produces measurable outcomes. Workforce expansion. Organizations gain access to untapped talent pools. Increased retention. Employees stay where opportunity is real and accessible. Innovation growth. Diverse perspectives lead to stronger problem solving and creativity. Market expansion. Serving underserved communities open new economic pathways. These are return on investments because equity is not just social impact, it's an economic strategy that's often missed. But strategy without execution doesn't produce results. So, how do leaders operationalize equity? Hmm. Equity must move from concept to daily decision making. What does that look like? That looks like hiring practices, meaning expanding beyond traditional pipelines, promotion systems, ensuring advanced pathways are transparent and equitable, procurement, partnering with minority and underserved businesses, and policy design, removing barriers that limit participation. Equity must be embedded, not added on. And once implemented, leadership must measure what matters. If equity is an investment, then leaders must track returns, right? Absolutely. And key indicators that leaders can use to track returns include, but not limited to, wage growth across diverse populations, retention and advancement rates, supplier diversity impact, community economic growth indicators. What get measured gets scaled. Now, let's bring this back to leadership responsibility because that's where it begins and that's where it ends. Equity requires a mindset shift. Now, this might hurt some people's feelings because the mindset shift is not just in words, but actions. It moves from the question, is this fair, to, is this effective? Now, I'm going to pause here for a second. I have a good friend, Taboon. She's a mastermind at finding funding for nonprofits, right? And she's great. She's the best in the business. She's so great at what she does. Now, if you don't follow her, please do. Taboon, Tyboone, right? And people want her help, but they don't want to trust her. People need her help, but don't want to pay her. I'm in another group, pause there. I'm in another group of contracting individuals, mainly women, men too. And oftentimes people are trying to find or figure out why they're not getting funding, why their applications are going dormant. They're lacking the right personnel for their nonprofit board. It's them, or them and their families. It's loopholes and gaps everywhere, right? So if I was to refer them to a Taboon, right, the best in the business, they couldn't afford them. And the first thing knowing Ty, she's going to talk about is that you're not funding ready because your nonprofit is not structured properly. So when we're talking about the return on investment and the equity and the funding and the poverty and breaking barriers and disrupting it, Guess what? Most people that are leading organizations today, especially nonprofit organizations, are not in the right framework or structure to be funded. Or there are gaps and holes in programming. They have no systems. They lack people close to the issue, so they lack solutions. So when we're talking about bringing this back to leadership responsibility, that leadership responsibility first starts with a mirrored image. You can ask the question or shift in the mindset from is it fair to is it effective, but then you would stop there because, and I'm talking about nonprofit right now, but we can talk about for profit, we can talk about individuals, but right now this is the easiest when we're talking about equity funding and that type of thing. It is fair, but it isn't fair because you're not ready. And it could be effective, but it won't be effective because the system is broken. Well, the foundation was never built. So it's already a mess, right? So before we can move or have you move to talking about equity and inequity and things like that, you first got to start with what you're looking at, what you're dealing with. Because any nonprofit I would work with outside of teaching a system, if you want to know profit or funding, I would revert you to Ty because she's the best in the business. Hands down, no question asked, systems all day long, right? But most of us are not ready for it because our foundation is flawed, right? And as we're bringing this back to the leadership responsibility, once we're asking or moving the mindset shift from is it fair to is it effective, we want to move from can we afford to invest in equity to can we afford not to? If your foundation is strong, if your systems are strong, then you should be able to move from the first question, is it fair, to is it effective? And then the second question is a no-brainer. Can we afford to invest in equity? The real question is, can you afford not to? Because if you are a nonprofit serving the community, you started it for a reason. And the reason are the people in your community, in or around. So, leadership that delivers results, understand that equity is not optional, it's essential. But some of y'all systems aren't in place and it's broken. Anyway, let's bring this into action, right? Here is your leadership challenge. And this is not just about nonprofits, it's a leadership challenge for all leaders or people who think that they're leaders or those that are leading effectively and want a challenge, right? Identify one area, not 12, one, where inequity is limiting outcomes in your organization. Now, if your organization is me, myself, and I, you're not organization, right? Keep working towards it. But then inequity could be the fact that it is just you. If you have a nonprofit board and you're missing the treasurer or the assistant treasurer or maybe the secretary or maybe the chairman, gaps. Fill the gaps, right? And again, just an example, but the leadership challenge number one is identify one area where iniquity is limiting outcomes in your organization. Real talk. Define one investment that could unlock opportunity. Let me repeat that. Define one investment that could unlock opportunity. Commit to measuring the return within the next 90 days. Okay, I'm going to repeat all three. Here is your leadership challenge. Choose one, choose all three. Identify one area where inequity is limiting outcomes in your organization. Self-assessment. Reality check, real talk. Number 2, define one investment that could unlock potential. External exploration, right? Commit to measuring the return within the next 90 days. If you do 1 and 2, you should see a pattern. You should have a better understanding as to what the return on investment looks internally and what the return on investment looks externally. Bring it together, you got a workable plan. Because here's the bottom line. Equity is not a side conversation. It's a growth strategy. And leaders who understand that are the ones who will drive real disruption. I love it. If this episode shifted your perspective, take the next step. Follow Disrupting Poverty Through Leadership That Delivers Results AM Talk Show on YouTube. Share how you are integrating equity in your leadership strategy, and tag a professional who needs to rethink equity as an investment. Because when equity is intentional, impact becomes measurable. Thank you. Have a great day. Until the next episode, peace out.